I wanted to start today's show by saying ahoy. I always have these little things like I want it a little be different. It'll be fun. I'll say and I never remember to do any of them. But ahoy, everyone. I don't
John,
even
you're
know.
really gonna need like a pirate hat and like a patch on your eye to do the ahoy
Yeah.
properly. I think.
You
but
scallywags.
Yeah.
So that just a little aside there for you. No, we should dive into this. So first things first, bitch ass rage quitters of the week.
Bitch ass rage quitters
Of the week. The first of these actually happened in the 45 minutes that I was playing before we started recording here. And it was against, I think this guy was like our original one, Master NSX, a Balrog player. Does that ring any bells? I think it does.
Seems
We'll
like
go
it
back
does,
and
yeah.
look. Yeah, anyways,
It's a Balrog player. Of course they rage quit, right?
Of
So-
course. Diamond ranked Balrog player. You know what? You protected those 35 points that you would have lost. Actually, no, he lost a ton, right? Because if you rage quit, I think you lose a bunch. You just didn't give
Yeah.
those 35 points to me, you jerk. But, and it did seem to take a little longer to load, and it seemed a little choppy. It really wasn't that bad in terms of lag. So maybe he was feeling like it was laggy, but as we know, you're playing online. You might have a laggy match. Don't rematch, but don't quit out of the one that you're already in. It's online. Duh, there's going to be some matches like that. Take it in stride, and don't be a bitch-ass rage quitter. The other one is a guy or girl named Toad Battles. And that's an Mika player. And this was actually sent in to me on Twitter by a Vega player. I think his name is DJ Claw. And so, and we actually have a little bit of footage of this shameful rage quit. Look at it right here. I can't see it, but you guys probably can. Yeah. Oh, ew, that was terrible. So yeah, those are shame on you, Toad Battles and Master NSX. I think for the second time, clean up your act, you jerks.
Yeah. Give us our freaking points back, you
bitch ass rage quitters
of the week.
turkeys.
Okay, so that was our welcome back to the bitch ass rage quitters of the week. Again, if you have people that rage quit against you, we are not big enough yet that we would have too many to show on the show. So you can go ahead, tweet it at either one of us, let us know, give us some footage of it, and we will put it up and we will shame them publicly in front of all 8 million people that watch our show. Oh, that reminds me.
Shame. Shame.
Yes, the shame number.
We need the gift in there, but yeah.
Yeah, it's about 8 million people that watch every episode, but only like 2,000-3,000 of you are subscribed. Please, you can unsubscribe later if you really don't like us. But dude, it helps us out a lot. So please subscribe. That's all I'm gonna say. Do it, you mateys. Okay. First order of business here. The music of Street Fighter. I looked through and did some research. I didn't do 10 hours worth of research, but I did go back through and listen to a lot of Street Fighter music. And I should be clear here, I was looking at the numbered entries, so that would be Street Fighter 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, a total of 6. There is Street Fighter EX, and I did listen to some Street Fighter EX, but I didn't want to open that can of worms because I felt like, well, there's already enough here with 1 through 6. If there's enough of a response or if people go crazy because we didn't cover EX, maybe we can do that in a future episode. Maximilian's, I think his outro theme is one of the Street Fighter EX songs. One of the very common Maximilian themes is in EX. I noticed that. Little side tidbit there for you. But I wanted to order these games in terms of how good their music is, and it's like, well, that's subjective, and yes, it is, and yes, this is my opinion. And John, we haven't really gone through this yet. He might disagree with me, and I'm actually kind of relying a little bit on him here because he's been more actively paying attention for longer. I, jumped in at Street Fighter 4, so played that for a million years and played 5, and I've dabbled in 3, and of course I've been around 2. Street Fighter Alpha was where I was kind of like, I'm not so sure, and Street Fighter 1 is not that great. But yeah, I want to get in and have some discussion here, talk about what kind of jumped out to me, what makes it good for me is it inspiring? And is it inspired? Does it sound like someone really sat down and put this together with intent, or did they try to just get some background music that would indeed do its job and fade into the background? But when a song jumps out at you and you get stuck in your head in a good way, not in like this is terrible kind of a way, and it raises the hairs on your arms, gives you goosebumps, makes you continue to sing it later on. You talk about it with your friends, and oh yeah, true love and tuna and bacon, Those are the ones that are going to stand apart. Those ones are going to be super memorable, stand the test of time. And so that's kind of what I was going for in terms of ranking these. You're free to disagree. Let us know in the comments if you do. Okay, so
yeah, it's one thing for me too, because I'm going to weigh in on this is how catchy, how much longevity has this music had? I'm sure you're going to get into like a bunch of ones that have like those, but that is like the hands down number one criteria for me. It's like, did the song stick with me? And there it is.
Perfect. So number 6 overall, last place. And it's not to say that any of these are bad. In fact, there's only one track in all of this where I was like, I don't want to listen to this anymore. I'd listen to it as a joke. People will be like, this song's really bad, but I'll just get to it. None of these are bad. It's just some are better than others. Let's be clear on that too. It's not only like hate any of these songs, but the worst, the least good of all of them is Street Fighter 1. And it makes sense. It's from 1987. It does its job for a fighting game from 1987, but not a ton more. I think it's the least inspired and least inspirational of all of these picks. And it does have a fairly off-putting song, and that is Sagat's song. So Sagat was the final boss of Street Fighter 1. And when you go into that, I was expecting, because we know Sagat's song now, right? Like he's kind of got that theme that came from SF2. It's one of the more iconic ones, and he's appeared a bunch of times, had his music remixed. Well, in Street Fighter 1, I don't think it was the beginnings of this song. I think it was its own thing, and I think it was just someone sat with a whole bunch of pots and pans and clanged around on them. Because man, I haven't played through Street Fighter 1, but I hear horror stories of how hard it is to beat Sagat, and I think 30% at least of that difficulty is listening to that song over and over again. One of the top YouTube comments when I was looking through and doing this research was someone said, it sounds like someone is torturing a Sega Genesis. I got a lot of upvotes. It's just like a metally, clangy kind of really off-putting thing. So there were some standout songs that I heard, and that was Eagles and maybe Birdies. But it wasn't enough to take this out of last place. It was kind of just, they were figuring things out on so many different levels, so I don't fault them too much, but I also can't put Street Fighter 1 above anybody else. And that's all we had to say about that. You don't have to weigh in on
Street Fighter 1. It's literally, I don't know if you could hear the music over people mashing their fist into the buttons kind of thing. It was not a very good, memorable game. And I mean, I think I get carpal tunnel every single time I try to play it again. So
all right.
That means the music sucks because the controls are bad, by the way. So.
Naturally. That was one of our criteria, right? So anyways, the next one on the list here is, I'm going to get flack for this, but hear me out before you like, comment, subscribe, and then leave the video abruptly. Street Fighter Alpha comes in at number 5 overall. Now, Street Fighter Alpha is interesting because there are essentially 3 games sort of tied into one with this. And Street Fighter Alpha 1 and 2 are pretty similar. There's a lot of overlap. They might be the same in terms of music, as far as I could tell. And that seemed not very memorable. Again, not super inspired. It was okay. It towed the line, but it was fine. Then Street Fighter Alpha 3 changes all of that. It's much more in the way of, it's got some groovy stuff. I remember Relento's theme was extra sick. Instead of just coming in and being like kind of a 4 chords sort of a thing, which is what a lot of SFA 1 and 2 were. Like Relento's, for instance, starts with this sound of like, it sounds like machine gun fire or like a bunch of bombs dropping in rapid succession, and then it gets into the song, and it's got so much little like nuance and build up, and that's characteristic of a lot of the songs. We right before we started recording here, we talked about Rose's theme and how that evolved, and how hers is one of the most iconic from SFA 3, but then like 1 and 2, it's like I just couldn't really get behind it. So if it were only Alpha 3, I think that Alpha would rank higher on the list, but 1 and 2 sort of bogs it down a bit. But I know that you spent some time with the Alpha games, and I wanted to hear what you had to say about them.
I actually really like Ken's Alpha 2 theme, but for the most part, like it's picking and choosing a few themes that are in there for Alpha 1 and Alpha 2, and you're like, oh yeah, I like this. But it, as you say, it really came together with Alpha 3. That's where the bigger tracks in the series came. And of course, that's why it's here on the list here, second to the bottom. It's the Alpha games, the longevity of their music has not been that great, unfortunately. I wish it was better, but there's only been a handful of tracks that have really kind of risen up through the years.
Mm-hmm. Speaking, oh no, I was gonna say speaking of Rise Up, that's Street Fighter Five. Street Fighter Five is not next. If you thought that maybe because this would, or maybe I would be biased because the game that I played the most would be the one that was most stuck in my head, most charming to me, you would be wrong because number 4 on the list is Street Fighter 4. Now, 4 has a lot of good, kind of good stuff going on. There's a lot of variety. I remember a handful of standout tracks like Balrog's and Cody's were really cool to me. But the whole thing kind of sounds like it's done in a studio on a keyboard with sound effects as opposed to real instruments with a real band. And that's not necessarily a deal breaker in and of itself, but it starts to like kind of fall into a repetition, and a lot of the songs for me kind of started to bleed into each other, and ultimately the other games on the list just did better than 4. 4 was fine. Again, it did its job. There were a handful that stuck out, but it didn't shine very brightly to me. And I will say now, if I could attribute this song to 4, it would immediately put it in first place, because it has the best song that's been in a Street Fighter game ever, and that, of course, is Indestructible. But that is not a song made by Capcom. Okay, you can't tell me that when that song queued up, when you started up Vanilla 4, because they got rid of it after Vanilla. In Super, they must have run out of rights or had a bad... Don't give me that. No. Indestructible. You weren't at the Evo. Maybe you were. Were you at the Evo? Where I think it was before Top 8, they played Indestructible, and the whole damn audience just sang along with it. And it was Evo moment 38. Unless that's already been taken, 39, whatever. It was an awesome, epic moment. It brought us all together. It makes your hand, or the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. It brings the goosebumps. It brings the passion and the power. But it's not Capcom's song. They borrowed it from someone else, and then they got rid of it after Vanilla. So if you could count Indestructible, Street Fighter 4 number 1. But because you can't, clocks in at number 4.
Can I leave the show?
Am I fired? No, please tell me.
I mean, you run the broadcast department, so Indestructible. I know Daigo would come out to that as his introduction. I hate that song.
Why?
I still hate it.
What's wrong with you?
It just sucks. I hate that song, but I know a lot of people are fans of it and stuff because of but yeah.
What did you think about 4 otherwise?
What's that?
What did you think about Street Fighter 4's music beyond Indestructible?
Oh yeah. Besides that, I love the solar eclipse stage. I think Sakura's theme is the best in Street Fighter 4 that's ever been done. Her theme's been done a lot. It's got a handful of standout tracks, but I actually super agree with its placement here. One of the big problems with the game is Street Fighter 4 is really it's held the test of time for a lot of people, but its music has not. And it's just there's a lot of other musical tracks that people are just much more fond of. So I think the placement here is really good, especially with Indestructible being a track on the Vanilla game. They took it out. They took it. The Indestructible was gone after Vanilla.
They took it out because the people couldn't handle it because it was so good. Too many heads were exploding before people could enjoy going online with Street Fighter 4, so they had to do something about it. But all right, next one up here on the list. Number 3 overall, Street Fighter 5. That's the most recent one. Now, there's a lot to be said about Street Fighter 5's music. In fact, with the game coming out the way it did, everything felt kind of half finished. I think music and maybe some of the visuals, not the character visuals necessarily, but the backgrounds and such, might have been the things that the developers started on first and thus finished by the deadline, because the music of Street Fighter V has actually been one of its standout things from the very beginning, and very few parts of this game can be said or can be put in that kind of a category. It's got some cool remixes. It's got a lot of characters with the updated versions of their songs, and they're good. They're not necessarily as good as maybe the originals and such, but I'm intrigued by them. I find myself kind of grooving to them. And unlike 4, 5 sounds, and it very much is made by an entire band in a studio with individual instruments, and you can hear all of that stuff. It feels very inspired, very nuanced. It'll take you on journeys. There's a lot of rocking and rolling in it, and ultimately, I'm very much impressed with 5. It does more than just toe the line. It does more than the status quo, and I know it's one of your favorites. So I do want to hear your response here, but it just wasn't enough to beat out the other 2, in my opinion.
because of how the music is implemented, this would probably be my number one. Shocker, because everyone knows I love Street Fighter V. But the thing about it is, on the menu screen, you can set it to random tracks. And if you've got the, the upgraded version of Street Fighter V, you get like, I don't know, was it like 100, 200, 300 tracks?
An
or something
intimidating
like that.
number of tracks.
It's wonderful. And then you've got original stuff like G's music is incredible. Manat's is great. I love Oro's new track. Like, there's so many standouts in Street Fighter V. Like, it's hard for me to find themes I don't like in this game. A lot of them are very well done. This would probably be my number one, but I also know the other games that are coming up, and there's a case for all those as well. So
Gotta ask you,
Street Fighter V.
what do you think about Ed's music? It's got lyrics. It's a rap.
I thought it was Red
Catalyst.
Rapper. Chemical Catalyst, Zayd Tabani. I thought he had recorded that, and I'm like, dude, is this you? Because
It's
it
super
sounds a
his
little bit
style.
like you. Yeah, dude, I want Capcom to reach out to Zayd and get him to record a track for Street Fighter 6 or get him in some involvement, because he does fighting game music all the time. It would be really cool if Capcom reached out to him and worked with him again, because I know they worked with him on like an ad campaign before. It's like, dude, get him in there, man. He's one of the few FGC artists doing stuff, so it'd be cool if he got back in there. But,
And I also think that it's similar to a lot of his older stuff, relatively older stuff. He recently came out with a new one, and we posted it on the front page, but if you missed it, check it out. Maybe we'll link it up here. And but yeah, he's doing some really good stuff. His newest song is called Rollback. And Zed's a good guy. He's a friend, a fan of the show. Found out he's been watching the show and such. And yeah, so shout outs to him. And if you haven't checked out his stuff, check out his stuff. It's cool. It's a little it crosses it bridges kind of like the hip hop and fighting, specifically the fighting game community and such. And so if you're a fan of hip hop and such, and you're a fighting game player, that's where to go. Okay, number 2 is number 3. Street Fighter 3 comes in at second overall. Now this is interesting to me because I've probably played 10 hours or so of Street Fighter 3 all in all. I enjoy it very much, and we have a candy cab at the arcade up in Phoenix that I haven't been to in like over a year now, but I've played a handful of matches there. A lot of Street Fighter 3 though, of the music that I've heard is because I'm like in the area, walking by, playing a tournament for 5 or 4, but Street Fighter 3 is on in the background. And I found like I recognize and know the songs and like the songs, and they haven't even been directly presented to me. And I'm like, that's something. Like, I know what the Street Fighter 3 character select screen sounds like, much quicker than I can recall probably most others, maybe 2. And it's I listen to like the nuances of the lyrics, and like the character select theme is just about character select, but it's a good little like hip hop thing. It's catchy. It's good. If you listen to the words, it's like, pick your character, 3, 2, 1, do the random select, number 1. I don't know. Those aren't the actual lyrics. Maybe they are, but it's really good. And then it's got a lot of very inspired, memorable tunes. The jazzy, a lot of it is jazzy. It's a little hip hop. Especially in like the openings, but then a lot of it is so much with jazz and like so you go to the famous subway stage, and in Street Fighter 3, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of characters share stages. It's like the subway stage is both Ken's and Alex's, for example. Right. And you can hear the saxophone in that, like just kind of, and you can start to dance to it to yourself, even if you're as white as I am. And then there's Ryu's stage. It's got this really like I don't remember like the chords of Ryu's stage, and this is the rooftop thing. But I remember those battle drums, man, the dun 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 dun, and they elicit a response from me. There's a lot of songs like that. Even Beats in My Head. Elena's song might be the most annoying, but maybe it's a little more charming than Sagat's Street Fighter 1 theme. A lot of these though, I was reminded of NBA Street Volume 2, listening to some of these tracks, but then that's always a good thing. That's like the highest praise you can give a video game, is if it sounds somewhat like NBA Street Volume 2. So yeah, and then I gotta say, Yun and Yang's song. That song has been evolved, and I knew it primarily from Street Fighter 4, but going back and listening to it in Street Fighter 3, it's a James Bond song. It's a James Bond song. I'm like, whoa, is this a cool spy character? No, it's Yun and Yang. Fair enough, but like, so many of these songs have standout things that inspire you, are very much inspired, clearly, and so Street Fighter 3 almost won. And we'll reveal the number 1 in just a second here, but I want to hear any thoughts and questions, comments, concerns you have on SF3.
Capcom did such a great job of the intro animations in Street Fighter 3. They really sell the music. I don't know how exactly they produced everything, or if the music came first or whatever, and like they tied it in there. But like, even, you know, as you mentioned, the James Bond thing, well, Yin and Yang, they come out and their animations kind of match the music, and it really sets the tone and the mood so well. And yeah,
I'm getting excited. I'm picturing it and getting excited just thinking about it, just you talking about it, and I hear it playing right now in my mind. Good stuff. So it's like,
yeah,
what could be better? Well, Street Fighter 2 could be better because, and let's go through it. It's the classic. It's the iconic. It's so many of the Street Fighter 2 songs are memorable not only within the Street Fighter community, but within the gaming community, right? You know Ryu's theme. You know Ken's theme. You probably know like Zangief's theme and such. And this is almost true for like every character of the original cast. And then you have stuff like Guile's theme, and like they've redone that how many times? But the best Guile's theme, and correct me if you disagree and you're wrong, is, you know, the original. Just, you can't beat it, man. It's just so good. It's meme worthy. It goes with everything. Yada yada. But Street Fighter 2 has so much of that, and it's the starting point. You remember that character select. You remember and maybe it's the charm of the game. But hey, you get augmented by being in a great and iconic and historical game. There you go. But pound for pound, I couldn't put Street Fighter 2 anywhere else except for number 1.
Yeah, it's hard to beat it. My order would be different, but I can't disagree with it being number one because of just how iconic the music has become. I love the intro music when you're first loading up the game, that dun dun dun, and that's been used so many places. And that's not even like, you know, a theme a lot of people talk about, but like you hear it so many places. And
It's inspiring, right? Like so many.
Yeah.
There's a Power Rangers
Yeah.
game. I think Bandai did it for SNES, and for the longest time, I thought it just had Ken's music in level 2 because it's so close. So, and there's a lot of things like that. You can go, I mean, there's a ton of Street Fighter copycats just outright, but there's a lot of music from, and especially like from the time with, we talked a little bit earlier about how like Street Fighter 5, for instance, sounds like it's very produced in there's like a real band and such, versus Street Fighter 4, which sounds kind of like it's done like digitally and such. But this was done back in the early 90s. So, you know, we kind of gave Street Fighter 1 a pass because, yeah, they only had so much and yada yada. This was just a few years later, and given the amount of technology and the resources that they had to do this, and they came out with these then with this, you know, like level of they didn't have like probably a band in the, I don't know. I was very impressed by Street Fighter 2, and it feels right putting it at number 1. So
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah, I would have changed up the order. Mine would have been Street Fighter 5 number 1, then Street Fighter 3, and then Street Fighter 2. Just because I do love the more modern, you know, instrumental kind of stuff. Like I do look at stuff like not necessarily what it was back then, but what it is now, you know, and what I'd rather listen to. So that you know, there's no wrong way to do it, right? It's just that's how I would do it. But everything else I agree with. Yeah, it's this is a franchise that's pretty well known for its music, and if you drop the ball on the music into things, people are going to let you know about it. You know, it's we need our True Love and Bacon that they talk about. So that's what we need, Capcom. Make sure you give it to us.